Hi guys, welcome back to our channel. Today's video packs a punch, quite literally, because, hello, Bruce Lee's in the house. While we agree that there cannot be enough Bruce Lee appreciation videos, this one is actually dedicated to the formidable villains he faced in his movies. While Bruce Lee is a legend in himself, his films pitched him against a bunch of intimidating opponents to test his martial arts prowess, which resulted in some of the best fight scenes in the history of cinema. How iconic was Tang Long breaking Colt's neck in the majestic setting of the Colosseum. And remember how relieving it was when Chen Zhen finally took down the iron bar bending Petrov. It's time to meet Bruce Lee's most powerful opponents, so let's begin. Before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us it means a lot. Thank you. Let's begin. Chuck Norris as Colt. Chuck Norris and Bruce Lee's exemplary battle in the 1972 movie The Way of the Dragon is a classic. Chuck Norris's character, karate champ Colt, was perhaps the only opponent of any Bruce Lee hero who could knock him down several times, give him a bloody lip, and leave him with a bruised face. Bruce Lee was visibly taken aback and seen as quite vulnerable for the first time, having finally met his match in Colt. Norris said he was the only one who could do something like that, and Bruce Lee knew that. "We'll make it a seesaw fight," Lee had told Norris on the phone. Norris, who was a karate world champion at that time, had worked out with Bruce Lee for 3 years before Lee moved to Hong Kong for his movie career. One fine day, Norris got a call from his friend Lee asking him to play his opponent in the film. "Do I have to lose?" "Yes, you will have to lose," was the conversation that took place between Chuck Norris and Bruce Lee on the phone before Norris signed the film. Bruce Lee's character Tang Long, after taking a few hits from Colt, gave him a blurry vision with his punches before finally snapping his neck. Norris is a black belt in 5 martial arts systems and a defending world champion. He developed 2 new fighting systems and lost just 10 times in his illustrious career as a professional fighter. Jihan J as Hapkido Master. Jihan J was the Hapkido Master, the second opponent who gave Bruce Lee a hard time in the film Game of Death. The film's climax was originally to be filmed in 5 fight sequences, each set on different floors of a South Korean pagoda. Bruce Lee filmed 3 of these 5 sequences before he went on to shoot for Enter the Dragon, soon after which he died in 1973. The half-completed Game of Death was then finished by Enter the Dragon director Robert Clouse and released in 1978. The film shows the original fight sequence between Jihan J and Bruce Lee, in which the Hapkido expert managed to throw a jumpsuit-clad Lee on the floor twice and even kicked him in the face. The fight, taking place on the 4th floor of the pagoda, ended with Lee snapping the Hapkido master's back. Han Jae's fight with Lee significantly stood out as Lee's advocacy for fluidity in martial arts. Han Jae was defeated as he limited himself to using only Hapkido while fighting Lee, while Lee tweaked his fighting style to take down the Hapkido master. Jihan J was a renowned Hapkido instructor in real life, who also founded the Sin Mu style of Hapkido, with his classes becoming extremely popular among martial arts enthusiasts. He also featured in the martial arts films Hapkido, The Dragon Tamers, and The Fist of the Unicorn. Kareim Abdul-Jabbar as Mantis. NBA star Kareim Abdul-Jabbar also doubled up as the villain Mantis in Game of Death. This villain was a mighty fighter without any definitive style, showing Bruce Lee pitched against the style of the unknown. With a height of 7.2 feet, Abdul-Jabbar towered over a 5'7" Bruce Lee, intensifying his menacing impact as a villain. The fight sequence taking place on the top floor of the pagoda began with Mantis launching a powerful kick at Bruce Lee and plastering his footprint on Lee's chest. Mantis sent Bruce Lee flying across the room several times before Lee found a way around their height difference and began to target his legs. Lee, who conceptualized the film, intended Mantis to be an incredible human specimen, the most effective fighter. Hence, he was placed at the top tier of the pagoda. Mantis's only weakness was light sensitivity, which Lee utilized to defeat his gigantic opponent. In real life, Kareim Abdul-Jabbar was Bruce Lee's close friend and a student of his Jeet Kune Do classes. Talking about the iconic fight sequence, Abdul-Jabbar said they had to alter their paces for the cameras to follow them around. We had to slow everything down because we were moving too fast and it looked too jerky on film. So we had to slow it down so the camera could follow us and people could see things. Dan Inosanto as Kali expert. World-renowned martial arts instructor Dan Inosanto, who was also one of the pioneers of Bruce Lee's martial arts style, Jeet Kune Do, was to be found on the third floor of the pagoda in Game of Death. Just like in real life, in the film too, Dan Inosanto's character was a Filipino Kali expert, Kali being the national martial art of the Philippines. With Game of Death, Bruce Lee intended to show that martial arts was more effective with the fluidity of form instead of rigid norms. Hence, he projected Inosanto's character as a strict Kali instructor who was eventually defeated because of his rigidity. After Bruce Lee's death, Game of Death remained incomplete while some of the previously shot footage got misplaced. While a portion of the fight was seen in the completed version of Game of Death, the entire sequence featured in the 2000 documentary Bruce Lee, A Warrior's Journey. The fight became all the more intense when Inosanto and Lee switched from fighting with sticks to the legendary nunchaku battle. Having lost his weapon at the end of the duel, Inosanto's character lost to Bruce Lee when he broke his neck with his nunchaku. Interestingly, it was Inosanto who had introduced Bruce Lee to nunchaku and trained him in the fighting style, just as Bruce Lee guided him with Jeet Kune Do. Dan Inosanto was also Lee's advisor and friend. After Lee's death, Inosanto took on the role of a spokesperson and historian for Jeet Kune Do. Bolo Yeung as Bolo. Enter the Dragon, released just days after Bruce Lee's death in 1973, introduced us to another indomitable villain, Bolo, played by Yang Zi, who came to be known as Bolo Yeung. In real life, he was a martial artist and professional bodybuilder who trained under Bruce Lee and went on to have an illustrious filmography as a martial arts movie actor. In Enter the Dragon, Bolo played the bulked-up enforcer of monk-turned-drug lord Han, who never really had a fight with Bruce Lee in the film, but Bolo did leave an impression while fighting the expelled guards of Han's island. Bolo beat them to a pulp one by one and delivered some ominous facial expressions while doing so. Bolo even knocked down the secondary protagonist Roper, played by John Saxon, with one single hit, but met his end when Roper launched the finishing blow. Bolo Yeung was the perfect amalgamation of a bodybuilder and martial artist, and many fans hoped to see a fight sequence between him and Bruce Lee. It is believed that the two never fought each other because both were considered excellent martial artists at that time, and one didn't want to vanquish the other on screen. Bolo Yeung is also best known for his negative roles opposite Jean-Claude Van Damme in Double Impact and Bloodsport. Shi Kin as Han. Shi Kin played the aforementioned Shaolin monk/criminal named Han in Enter the Dragon, who used to organize fight tournaments in order to secretly appoint powerful henchmen for his underground drug business. He had an artificial left arm to which he could attach Wolverine-like metal blades. That's how he managed to leave Bruce Lee all scratched and bloody during the penultimate fight in the trophy room before meeting his end in the Hall of Mirrors. The mirror fight sequence remains one of the most mind-boggling scenes of Bruce Lee's films. Though Han was a martial arts expert, he was no match for Bruce Lee's hero, but with his cunning he tricked Lee into the Hall of Mirrors, which served as an unconventional setting for a showdown. With his prosthetic hand, Han could beat up a former war veteran to death. Shi Kin, who starred in over 100 films, was best known for playing antagonists in Hong Kong films and martial arts movies, with Enter the Dragon introducing him to the Western audience as well. Some of his best work as a martial arts actor can be witnessed in Jackie Chan's The Young Master, Hong Kong 1941, Tears of the Pearl River and Millionaire's Express. Bob Wall as O'Hara. Bob Wall, also known as Robert Wall, was a martial arts champion who faced off against Bruce Lee twice on screen. First time in Lee's directorial debut The Way of the Dragon, and the second time in Enter the Dragon as the main villain Han's bodyguard named O'Hara. The character, who was a karate master, was made to look pretty menacing with a long scar across his left eye. Bruce Lee's hero had to fight him off as part of a tournament hosted by Han on his private island, which turned out to be quite a tense scene as O'Hara was responsible for Lee's sister's death. O'Hara, who was previously established as indomitable, did not stand a chance against Lee. Angered by his failure, he challenged Lee with broken glass bottles. Lee finished off O'Hara with one final blow to his neck and ended up cutting his hand for real. In an interview later, Wall talked about the incident and said, "When the accident that cut Bruce's hand occurred, the kick landed on my arm above the elbow, so the bottle didn't move, and as Bruce spun around, he jammed his right hand into the bottle." Wall also appeared as a kickboxer in the 1978 film Game of Death, fighting against the protagonist Billy Lowe. Interestingly, Wall trained under another Bruce Lee villain. He was a 9th grade black belt under Chuck Norris, aka Colt. Hwang In-shik as Hapkido fighter. In The Way of the Dragon, Hwang In-shik's character, a Japanese karateka, was hired to fight Bruce Lee's Tang Lung by the local gangsters in Rome. As is tradition, Lee was victorious, but with Hwang In-shik as the opponent, it resulted in a rather dramatic fight sequence, in which he resumed his fighting form repeatedly, even after Bruce Lee dealt him some of his deadly kicks. Hwang was in talks with Bruce Lee for a role in Game of Death, presumably as the guardian of the first level of the pagoda, which did not materialize after Lee's death. In real life, Hwang In-shik was a Hapkido Grandmaster with a 10th degree black belt, which is the highest rank possible in the art. After he retired from cinema, Hwang In-shik was brought back into acting by Jackie Chan, following which he starred in The Young Master and Dragon Lord. Chikara Hashimoto as Hiroshi Suzuki. Next up, we have the katana-wielding villain Hiroshi Suzuki from the 1972 movie Fist of Fury, played by Chikara Hashimoto, who is often erroneously referred to as Riki Hashimoto. Hiroshi Suzuki, who was brilliant with his menacing expressions, was the master of a Honku dojo. He attacked Bruce Lee's hero Chen Zhen with his katana in the final battle scene that took place at the dojo. And the showdown between Hiroshi Suzuki and Chen Zhen led to a goosebumps-generating scene which is among the best fight sequences of Bruce Lee's movies. The fight gradually switched to a nunchaku versus katana duel, with Hiroshi Suzuki carving a gashing wound on Bruce Lee's chest. Then Suzuki engaged Bruce Lee in a hand-to-hand combat in a show of pure kung fu skills, but the villain went flying out of the dojo when Lee landed a kick at his neck. In real life, Chikara Hashimoto was a professional baseball player in Japan till he switched to movies following an injury at the baseball field, and since then he starred in a number of action movies. Interestingly, Jackie Chan was Hashimoto's stuntman on Fist of Fury, and the two later co-starred in Hashimoto's last movie, 1986's Twinkle Twinkle Lucky Stars, in which he featured as a fighter. Yi Feng as Yoshida. Before proceeding to the final battle scene in Fist of Fury, Chen Zeng had to deal with another opponent, the head instructor of the karate dojo, Yoshida, played by actor Yi Feng. At first, Yoshida was somewhat surprised that Chen Zhen obliterated the students of his dojo, and then he challenged Chen Zhen to a hand-to-hand kung fu battle. Yoshida was equally skilled in fighting with the samurai sword and attacked Chen Zhen with incessant blows of his katana. Yoshida met his dramatic end when Bruce Lee sent his katana flying in the air, which pierced through Yoshida on its way back to the ground. Chen Zhen regarded Yoshida as a powerful opponent, and he is seen taking pauses and planning his next move against him with caution. Meanwhile, despite being a karate master, Yoshida took a nervous gulp before striking Bruce Lee with his sword. Yifeng has a lengthy filmography to his credit, which includes martial arts movies such as The Magnificent Trio and Come Drink With Me. Robert Baker as Petrov. "Let me take care of him," said Robert Baker as the Russian mob boss and martial arts fighter Petrov in Fist of Fury. Before fighting Hiroshi Suzuki, Chen Zhen faced a towering opponent, the smug and taunting Petrov. He was a cold-blooded brute who attacked Chen Zhen with all his strength, launching a few hard-hitting blows on his face and even knocking him down to the ground in the dojo. Petrov proved to be a challenging villain for Bruce Lee's hero because of his crude fighting style and his size and strength. Thus, Chen Zhen was seen resorting to unorthodox ways of defending himself. Petrov was powerful enough to pin Bruce Lee to the ground, who had to bite Petrov's leg to be freed from his killer grip. Petrov initially succeeded in fending off attacks from Lee till he was superseded by Lee's speedy flurry of blows. Bruce Lee finished him off with a flying kick to his head, then a chop to his throat. Robert Baker was a martial arts actor and stuntman who also starred in The Way of the Dragon. Baker was a friend of Bruce Lee and asked him to be his teacher, following which he trained in Jeet Kune Do. It was Lee who brought Baker on board for the role of Petrov and dubbed his portions in the Mandarin and Cantonese versions of the film. Ha Ying-che as Xiaomi. Ha Ying-che, who played the titular villain in the 1971 movie The Big Boss, had unmatchable style and spunk. Ha Ying-che's character, Xiaomi, was the owner of an ice plant, which was just a front for his illegal drug business. In the movie's final showdown, with Bruce Lee's Chung Chao-an took on the Big Boss, who turned out to be quite a threatening opponent. Lee had to recover several times from his attacks. This skilled villain engaged Bruce Lee in hand-to-hand combat for quite a while, matching his kung fu skills move by move. Towards the end of the final battle, the knife-wielding Big Boss gave the hero a deep cut on his chest. The Big Boss met his end when Bruce Lee deflected the knife thrown by the Big Boss at his torso and then went on to stab him with his bare fingers. What a gruesome death for a villain of the Big Boss's stature. Ha Ying-che also featured in Bruce Lee's Fist of Fury and starred in other martial arts films like The Swordsman and New Fist of Fury. Tony Liu as Xiao Qian. Another gangster, though not of Xiaomi's stature, that Bruce Lee's Chung Chao-an fought off in The Big Boss was the eponymous villain's son, Xiao Qian. He and his men, all carrying knives, attacked Chung Chao-an in the ice plant, only for him to take down the goons one after the other. Tony Liu also featured in Bruce Lee's Fist of Fury and The Way of the Dragon. In addition to Bruce Lee's films, Tony Liu also starred in a gamut of martial arts movies ranging from The Jewel of the Century of 1981 to The Wrath of Vajra of 2013. Ping-O Wei as Ho. The Way of the Dragon had another villain whose main weapon was his cunning. We are talking about the mob boss's second-in-command, Ho, played by Ping-O Wei, also known as Paul Wei. He repeatedly sent thugs to the restaurant that Bruce Lee was guarding, leading to multiple fight sequences. When his gang of goons did not stand a chance against Lee's hero, Tang Lung, Ho took the restaurant workers hostage and kidnapped Tang Lung's love interest. Ho was also the one who employed the aforementioned villain Colt, played by Chuck Norris, and tricked Tang Lung into an unprecedented showdown in the Colosseum in Rome. Ping-O Wei also featured as a shrewd mediator in Bruce Lee's Fist of Fury. Dean Jagger as Dr. Land. Oscar-winning Hollywood veteran Dean Jagger aptly played the crime syndicate boss Dr. Land in the 1978 version of Game of Death. The film, released 5 years after Bruce Lee's death, stitched together original footage shot by Bruce Lee and new portions to create a plot different from what was conceptualized for the 1972 film. The villainous Dr. Land attempted to intimidate the protagonist, martial arts movie star Billy Lowe, into accepting his extortion demands. When he failed to do so, Dr. Land sent his thugs to kill Billy Lowe, who narrowly missed that fate but faked his death and went into hiding. Dr. Land kidnapped Billy Lowe's fiancée to force him out of hiding and lured him into the Red Pepper restaurant, where he and his men were waiting to kill him. The Red Pepper restaurant represented the multi-storied pagoda of the originally conceptualized film. Dean Jagger was a legend in himself, and his portrayal of the ruthless mob boss was a high point of the movie. Marvelous verdict. Be it Colt, Petrov, Suzuki or Mantis, the Bruce Lee movies indeed gave us some iconic villains to remember. Through his remarkable action choreography, Bruce Lee always let the villains have their moment before coming out on top. Such was his genius. Which of these Bruce Lee villains is your favorite martial arts baddie? Tell us in the comments below. And if you liked our video, give us a shout out and watch this space for more marvelous content.